Without question, one of my favorite artists musically is Jimi Hendrix. Big, 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 big Jimi Hendrix fan. I think I've read just about every Jimi Hendrix book possible that I could get my hands on. First album of his that I got to listen to was Are You Experienced? Loved it. And in fact, just to really date things here, I got it as one of those 12 for a penny CDs that Columbia House used to do, if anybody remembers those anymore. But I loved Are You Experience. In fact, um, throughout the entire summer of 1995, that and probably Dark Side of the Moon were the two albums I was listening to the most when I was in art college. The second Jimi Hendrix album that I got a hold of after Are You Experience was Electric Ladyland. Of all the Hendrix albums, perhaps Electric Ladyland is overall my favorite. See, with Are You Experience in his second album, Axis Bold as Love, he was still dealing with the control of his managers. If you notice, there's not a real lot of long songs that go past 4 minutes on either Are You Experience or Axis Bold as Love. His management wanted to keep his songs as tight as possible. 3 minutes. That was pretty much the standard length of any song back in the 60s. 3 minutes, that's it, in out. By the time he got to record Electric Ladyland, he had learned enough about recording in the studio that he could start calling his own shots. That's why you have original Voodoo Child clocking at like 14 minutes or something like that. And why you have the 20-minute combo of 1983 plus Moon Turns Tide, because he was just going all out. He was really stretching the limits of what he could do musically, and he could do a lot. There's not a whole lot I can say about this album. I mean, the album was recorded in 1968 and still sounds just as good today as it probably did back then. At no way does it really sound dated. From a production standpoint, keep in mind they were using what's now considered 45, 50-year-old musical equipment. So it may not sound as polished sonically as an album produced today, but that's a minor gripe. My favorite songs off of Electric Ladyland, so many to choose from. I mean, you got just the brief Have You Ever Been to Electric Ladyland, which is only about a minute and some change long. But it's the best singing, pure singing that Jimmy ever got to do. Voodoo Child is just this long, bluesy jam with Steve Winwood guesting on the organ. It sounds like something that was recorded late at night at a nightclub with just Jimmy and a bunch of his friends playing for the hell of it. And I later found out that no, it was actually recorded in the studio, just like every other song. They just added in the hand claps at the end to give it that live feel. Ultimately, my favorite song, Burning of the Midnight Lamp. The first time I heard it with the wah wah effect, he's using for the guitar, I thought this was probably the closest any musician could ever get to sounding like science fiction. I am almost positive that had Jimmy lived throughout the 70s, he would have tried to compose the music for Star Wars. Go back to the song Are You Experience, or the song of Axis Boat is Love, or Burning of the Midnight Lamp, or 1983. That is just otherworldly music. That's music built for outer space, which leads to 1983, a song which is supposed to be about a guy building a submarine to live underwater to escape the apocalypse. It has a nighttime feel, a twilight kind of feel, underwater, which is appropriate for the song. It really does sound very trippy, if you could use that to describe a song. Jimmy was probably the best musician to get what it was like to be on an acid trip or an LSD trip, and to then translate that into music, besides maybe the Beatles. And I think in that sense, Jimmy surpassed the Beatles in giving you that feeling of being psychedelic. House Burning Down is one of the rare protest songs that Jimmy got to play. This was coming out after the Watts riots of the 60s, the assassination of Martin Luther King and Robert Kennedy. It's a very political song, and nowadays, if you look at what's going on in the news with protesting, it's very relevant today, which could be a sad commentary on how little our society has advanced with treating one another. All along the Watchtower, it's one of those. Truthfully, it's a song I never really got into much. I mean, it's a really good song. I can't argue from a production standpoint. But it just never hooked me. I imagine if I had grown up in the 60s and got to hear the Dylan version first, and then heard Jimmy's, it might have got to me a little bit more. But honestly, it's a song of his that I always kind of skip over. Um, I would probably listen to Gypsy Eye a lot more than I ever will listen to All Along the Watchtower. I'll probably listen to Rainy Day, Dream Away more than All Along the Watchtower. Just ultimately, it just never got me. Not a bad song, just not my cup of tea. But what is definitely my cup of tea is Voodoo Child's Slight Return. That is just pure rock and roll right there. It's got the blues, it's got updated rock. Lenny Kravitz still wishes he could come up with a song as great as Voodoo Child's Slight Return. He keeps trying. I think Are You Going to Go My Way is the closest he ever got to achieving that, but still, it's a distant third compared to what Jimmy put out. So every time I hear this album, I'm just again back in Philly, riding my bike through downtown Philly. It's school's over with, I'm on my way to work, or I'm on my way to interning. I'm dodging cars, listening to crosstown traffic. At night with the stars and the moon out, I'm listening to Burning of the Midnight Lamp, getting into that nighttime kind of feel. It holds up today, and I'm sure it'll hold up in another 20 years. when you think about it, Jimi Hendrix only got to put out three studio albums and one live album while he was alive. His first album came out in '67. Electric Ladyland came out in '68. The Band of Gypsys live album came out in 1970. And then he died tragically. That's four albums, and it still holds, it's still timeless, and idiots like me are still talking about it. And that's the best memory I can think of for Jimi Hendrix Electric Ladyland.